Hi everyone, and welcome back to Crochet Rocks. I've just put up a tutorial for this baby beanie in the white and the pink, and to match that I've done a little baby mitten, and this is also in bulky 5 or chunky yarn, and I'm going to make the other one which will match this beanie. So the yarn I'm using is this Chunky Deluxe Spot yarn, and I got this from a store in the UK called B&M, but you can use any chunky yarn, which in the US is a bulky 5. Having said that, this is actually quite hefty as far as chunky yarns go. I'm also using to edge it a little bit of this fluffy, that's a little speck that just picked up, fell it on the floor. So this is just a little ball of fluffy yarn that I had free from a magazine, and I never intended to make what was actually intended in the magazine, so I just use it for little bits and pieces of projects. So but you can use any fluffy yarn. For the hat that I've just made, I used Peter Pan Precious, which is a little bit fluffier. I'll just find it for you. Here it is. So it's a little bit silky and softer and fluffier, whereas that one is more of a teddy bear fluff. But I'm going to use the white because I thought it looked so much nicer with the white glove. So what you'll need then is a 6mm crochet hook, which is a J in the US, a pair of scissors and some darning needles. Okay, so how I begin is with a magic loop. Before I go on, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. You'll be informed when there are new videos. Also, this will be a left and a right-handed tutorial, so there will be a link at the beginning and the end to those, and in the description box. So I'm just going to move all of these out of the way, and I'm going to start with a magic loop. Now, I do a really easy magic loop, and all I do is make a loop, just a simple loop like that, and then I insert my crochet hook into the loop and bring the yarn through, and then you're done. So I'm just going to do one chain and cinch it down a little way so that just finishes that nicely. So now I'm going to do the same stitch that I did for my beanie, which in the US is called a half double, and in the UK is a half treble. And that's quite a simple stitch. It's just yarn over. We're going into the center of the loop, over the tail and over the loop, and pull up a loop. And then we just yarn over and pull through all 3, and that is the stitch. So into my magic loop, I'm going to do 8 of those. So again, I'll show you a couple of times, nice and slowly. So it's yarn over, into the ring, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over through all 3. So I just want 8 all together. Pull that a little bit tighter if you feel it's getting a little loose, or you're worried about the tail coming through it. Now I've lost count. I'll just count them in a second. So let me just see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that 6? I need to move them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you ever get confused, just count the V's on the top. So I need to do 2 more into my ring. And now I have my 8. So I'm not going to pull it too tight just yet. All I'm going to do now is slip stitch into my first one. And if you're not sure where that is, as I said to you, count the V's. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you need to slip stitch into this one here, and then you'll always be right. So just slip stitch and pull it through. And now if we want to, we can grab this tail. I'll move that out you can see it more clearly, and pull that and it will close that ring. It will open up while we're working. Until it's secured and sewn in, it will pull out, but with the chunky yarn it doesn't pull out quite as much. So what I'm going to do now is one chain and cinch it right down. I don't really want it to be a proud chain, like sitting up proud, because it gets confusing as to where your stitches are. So in each one of my stitches around, I'm going to do 2 half trebles, which is the UK term, a half double. So that's, I'm going into the same spot and I'm going to do my first one and my second one into the same space. First one's always a little tighter. So then in each stitch around, I'm going to do 2. So whereas I started off with 8 stitches, I'll end up with 16. Now if you wanted to make these bigger, got to remember they do look quite large, but they're chunky, so on the inside they're bulky weight, so they're not that big. But if you wanted to make them bigger, you just do 10 or 12 initial stitches, and that's how you go up a size using the same yarn. So if you wanted to, I would say these were kind of a 0 to 3 months, and if you wanted to make them 6 to 12, you can just make them bigger that way. So I'm going to continue round, making 2 stitches in each one until I get back to the start. If I go ahead of you, then please just hit the pause button and wait to catch up with me. So this is the last one, so I'm going to do my 2 in there, and now I just need to slip stitch into that stitch there. Get my big hook in there. There we are. So that's as far as we go with our increasing. We don't need to increase anymore. We're just going to do our chain and cinch it down and do 1 stitch in every single stitch all the way around. So we're going to carry on with our 16 stitches and just work in the round just like this, 1 in every stitch. Likewise, if you thought these were big, then just do fewer rounds and that will make it smaller. But I did want to have a little bit of room inside them, because you know babies do like to sort of stretch their fingers out and move around. But if you could just have cut off maybe one of these rows and had it shorter. So you really, it doesn't matter too much. It's completely up to you. But so just going to do 1 in every single stitch all the way round until I get back to the start, and I'll show you what we do next. As you can see, it's pulling up, sort of cup shaped, taking on the shape of a glove. So now we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch, and now this is the reverse side, and if we pop it round like that, we're now got it the right way round, and we can just continue working in 1 stitch, doing 1 stitch in each stitch, without any increasing at all. We're just now making the length. So this particular mitten that I made, I have a total of 8 rows from the initial. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So then once I get to the 8th row, we do something slightly different. But for 8 rows, this is all we're going to do. Just continue 1 stitch in each stitch round, joining with a slip stitch and then doing it again. So I'll get round to the end of this row with you. It does kind of pull in a little bit when you're working with it. Might buckled the wrong way, but just pop it through again the right way. I wanted to make a chunky pair. I think the ones I had on my channel already were in DK weight, like a 3-weight yarn, but I wanted to make a nice wintry chunky pair. So now I'm going to join with a slip stitch, and there we go. So you can see it's taking on the right shape now, and we're going to continue for the 8 rows. So we've already done, where are we, it's hard to see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we do 4 more rows. I'm going to pause the video, get on with that, and I'll come back to you when I've done another 4 rows. Right, so I've done my 8 rows, and this is what it looks like. So as I said to you before, if you wanted it smaller, you could have done just 7, but I've got mine obviously going to match each other. So I'm going to do my chain and cinch it down, and then in the same stitch I'm going to do a UK double crochet, which in the US is a single crochet. So that's just inserting the hook, pulling up a loop and going through both. 1 chain, skip 1, and then we're going to do another one in the next stitch. So it's insert, pull up a loop, yarn over through both, 1 chain, skip 1, and we're going to do 1 in the next stitch, 1 chain, skip 1, and go into the next stitch, 1 chain, skip 1, and 1 into the next. And we're just going to do that all the way around until we get back to the start. I'm leaning on my yarn. So at the end of the row, we'll do our 1 chain, and we'll skip 1, and then we'll slip stitch into our beginning of the row. And we're going to do the 1 chain and cinch it down. So now we've got, that is just the beginning of the, the magic loop, the yarn, the end, the tail. So you've got a row that kind of looks like this. It's hard to see it because it's small, but that's all I really wanted, was a nice small row. So for this row, we're going to just do 1 in each of our stitches. So we're going into the first one, and we're going to do a UK double or a US single, and then we're going to do 1 straight into the gap, straight into the space that we've made with the 1 chain, and then 1 into the next stitch, and then 1 into the 1 chain space. Just go straight into the space, and so that will get us our stitch count back to normal. And we're going to do that all the way around, 1 into the chain space and 1 into each of the stitches until we get back to the beginning. Not far to go, so didn't bother pausing. So there's not that many stitches, and then 1 into that one and 1 into that space, and now we're back at the start. So we're just going to slip stitch into our first stitch and take our scissors, leave a nice long tail, do our chain, cinch it down and pull it through to end off. So there we are. That's what our mitten now looks like. We've got our row, which is going to have our tie thread all through it like this, and this little row above it just to get it our stitch count back to normal. So now we get rid of our spotter yarn, or whichever yarn you've made it with, and we bring in the fluffy. And so those of you who've watched me before, you'll know that I don't like to work over two tails if I don't have to. So I go to the opposite end, and you can just join into any one of your stitches going through the top 2 loops. And all I'm going to do is bring my yarn through, and using my working yarn and my tail, just do a chain, drop the tail. So now I'm going to do a half double, which is a US term, or a half treble UK term, in every stitch, so including the one that I've just come out of. So there we go, 1 in each one, all the way around. I'm going to work over my tail until there is no more tail. Just 1 in every single stitch. Just going to do 1 row, same as the hat, with this cute fluffy yarn. And now I've got back to this end, I'm just going to work over this tail as well. Just saves that little bit of sewing in. It's not that there's a great deal of ends to sew in, but it helps along the way, just to even if you only do it partially and then sew it back through again the other way, so that it secures it a little better. So we're just going to do that in each one. Move the tail out of the way. It's almost back. That's it, so we've got 1 more to do. And now we're just going to slip stitch into our first stitch, cut it off but leave a nice long tail. I'm going to make 1 chain, cinch it down and pull it through the same way. So just for now I'm going to pop those inside out of the way. At the end I'll turn it inside out and I will sew them all in, but that's what we're looking like now. Got a nice little fluffy top. Excuse me. So with this one, as you can see, I made my tie using this yarn, but you can use a smaller weight. It might look a little bit more drapey if you just did it in white of a smaller, say DK weight, or an Aran weight, which is a 4. I did try to make it in this fluffy, but it looked awful. I didn't like it. So all I did was, for the tie, I did 45 chain, but I didn't do them tightly, just loosely. But I may change it at some point and just do a white in a DK, and usually 50 is sufficient. So hang on, I'm losing count. So I've done 6. I'm going to pause the video and I'll come back to you when I've done 45. Okay, so I've done my 45 and I just pull those ends tight, and then I get a darning needle and just thread that in. Don't have to do it with a needle, you can actually just pass it through. It's quite easy. So I'm just going to find the middle, and you can see there's this kind of post here. I'm just going to pop it in and just sew it so it goes through. Now leave a nice long bit that end and just keep going, threading it through. You don't, as I say, need a needle really, but you'll come out the other side of that post, pull that out. Now what I do now is I just pull these ultra tight and then leave a little tail, but nothing much. And you can do whichever tie you want. As I say, if you were perhaps doing a different colour fur, then you could do whichever colour. But I think it's probably a little bit more effective in a thinner yarn, but it looks nice because it's the same you know, the spotty yarn. So you just, when I do this, I tend to make a few different ties and then give them with it. So there we are. There we have a pair, identical. But as I say, if you want it to be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, you just, to make it bigger and wider, you would just maybe do 10 stitches or perhaps 12, depending on the size you want. Or if you wanted it to be a little bit shorter, you just lose one of these rounds and it will be a bit smaller. This one is a slightly larger because I've turned it inside out and sewn those ends in, and the act of turning it inside out makes it look a little bit bigger. And I've got to do that yet, so I've got to secure my ends and tie that in. So thank you for watching. They're such a little cute thing. Now the hat, if you wanted to, you can always turn the brim up, which does look kind of cute on this one and on this one. So if it's a little bit big at first for the tiny baby, you can always make a little brim, which is so cute. So thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be informed when there are new videos. And thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.